Can you hear me okay, Sam?
I can, yes.
Right on time. Have you always been the punctual creative type?
I am actually. I went to business graduate school before I became an actor, so I kind of always bring that stuff with me. And also my dad just like instilled in me when I was a kid growing up that it was very unprofessional to show up late for anything. So my wife is not happy because I'm usually the guy who's 45 minutes early going, okay, we gotta go.
I've heard it said that, 9 times out of 10, it works out the, if you're on time, you're late, that approach. So 9 times out of 10, pretty much your way is the right way of doing it. And then every now and then you hear somebody who gets the job because they're late. The person goes, oh, I like that vibe. That person has the right attitude.
I could never be that guy. I've heard people say that, he didn't want the job that badly and he was really cool. And it was like, if he got it, great. If he didn't get it, that was okay too. I would have to pretend to be that guy because it was like, you know what? They said be here at 11. I'm here at 11. It's like, that's just my MO.
The 1 out of 10 of those, I believe that's how Ed O'Neill got married with children. He showed up in his sweaty clothes from racquetball. He didn't care, and then went, that guy's perfect. So
yeah, no, again, that I know a bunch of guys like that, and that's who they are. They're not pretending to be that person. They are that person. I'm not that person. So again, when what I've learned from being an actor is basically you're selling yourself. And so basically this is who I am, and I couldn't be Ed O'Neill and I couldn't do what he does. So I just kind of show up and I'm me. And if they're buying that program, I'm good. If they're not buying my program, then fine. That's, nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Well, you've identified yourself as an actor, but of course your extensive credits have work as a writer, a producer, a director. Was there a period of stand-up for you as well?
Yeah, that's kind of how the whole writing thing started. I didn't have enough nerve to be a stand-up and actually stand up on stage and tell jokes. Sure. So I had a friend who was an actor, and I said to him, I could get up on stage if you could get up on stage and we'll be characters. And so he said, well, what exactly do you mean? I said, well, we'll create characters. We'll show up at the comedy club as those characters. We'll stay in character the whole time, and then we'll leave. And he said, that's almost like performance art. And I said, yeah, I think it might be kind of a cool experiment. So he was from New Jersey, and he had a Pontiac Grand Prix that was gigantic. And we came up with 2 characters. I was Sal Sirico. My legal name is Salvatore. So I was Sal Sirico and he was Junior Carmelo. And we showed up at these comedy clubs and we had ridiculous clothes on, gold chains and silk shirts. And he wore sunglasses the entire time. And we signed in as Sal and Junior. And the problem was the characters we were playing desperately wanted to be in show business, but we had no talent. And so we read joke books on stage. We did a mind reading act where he wore a big turban and I would talk to the audience and he would get everything wrong. It was, looking back on it now, I'm amazed that I had the nerve to do it, but it was like surreal. And we ended up getting a deal at Universal to develop a pilot based on those 2 characters. Yeah. Which is, in talking to you earlier, that's how we met Joe Piscopo. That was the connection to Joe Piscopo's. We signed a deal with Universal to do a pilot. We wrote with 2 other writers writing the pilot. The pilot didn't sell, but Universal liked us, and they had a deal with Piscopo to do a pilot for him. They put our characters, us, in his pilot. His pilot kind of sold, and then the head of production at ABC quit or got fired, depending on who you talk to, and the pilot died. So then Gary, my writing partner, and I went on from Universal to another production company who had a deal with Joe to do a comedy special at UCLA. and we got hired because we had the connection with Joe to write the comedy special for him.
Wow. The
And
almighty holding deal combined.
Yeah,
with
I mean, again,
deal.
yeah, I don't even know if they have those anymore. And now they have, you get a deal if you're a very, very established writer. But
Right.
literally, I mean, one of the funny stories is we went to Universal. They took us up in the Black Tower. We met everybody. And that afternoon, they said, okay, we want to sign a deal with you. And we didn't have a literary agent at that time. We didn't have a lawyer. And we were like, yeah, well, sure. Okay. That sounds good. And we're like, well, what does that even mean? And then after we signed the deal, we didn't even know how to write a script. So
right.
I went to
naturally funny. You're not structured, trained funny.
There was a store in Hollywood called Samuel French, which sold theater books, and they had a book on formatting.
Yeah.
And I bought a book on formatting. We didn't have a computer. We had a typewriter. And we started typing up our notes on the typewriter, and then we would bring them to Universal, and there was somebody who typed it up and put it into the proper format for a script. And it took us about 2 weeks to kind of figure out, oh, okay, this is how it's supposed to be, the margins, and this is how it's supposed to be indented. And so we kind of backed into being writers, and then we ended up writing together for 10 years and made a pretty nice living as writers. So it was my whole career has been a series of odd occurrences that basically I was in graduate school and left graduate school to be an actor because a friend of mine asked me if I wanted to do a teeny part in a play. And I remember going back to graduate school and telling the dean, yeah, I'm going to be doing a play in a garage for no money. And I'm more excited about that than I am about taking finals at graduate school. So maybe I shouldn't be going to graduate school any longer. And he was like, yeah, I think that's probably a good thought. So again, it hasn't been like I had like a plan for most of the stuff that's, a lot of good stuff has happened, and I've worked really hard to then kind of get to the next level. But a lot of it was just kind of like, okay, you want to write a pilot? Yeah, sure. Okay. You want to write a comedy special? Yeah. All right. We could do that,
That's one of the shortcomings, in my opinion, of IMDb, where it's wonderful that you can look people up, but it rarely has the complete credits because it doesn't usually have pilots. It doesn't have stuff that was done under holding deals or development deals.
Oh, yeah. No.
When I look at your credits, it looks like, hey, he worked every year he did stuff, but clearly it doesn't have a lot of the stuff that you wrote.
No. And again, and it's very weird when you have like a holding deal, because again, as bizarre as it sounds, they pay you to be funny.
Yeah.
And all you do is you sit in your office and you try to come up with funny ideas. And some of them are not so funny and some of them are funny. And you just keep turning them in and they go, no. Oh, maybe. Okay, write that. And then you write a script and it goes nowhere, or it goes to the next level and they try to pitch it and move it around different places and it ends up not being sold. But for a year, you're writing 5 days a week. Not 8 hours. I'll be honest and say we fudged and we probably only wrote.
Right.
We played around for about 2 hours out of the day and then took an hour lunch, and then we wrote because we were like actors, and then we were like 10-year-old kids. We would go to the commissary and eat lunch and chat with people.
Oh, you were on the lot.
Oh yeah, we were
wow.
we were on the lot. And again, you'd walk around we were like tourists. We were, let's go look at the prop shop. That looks like it'd be kind of cool. And then the funniest part was then we didn't work at Universal anymore because they didn't pick up our option. So we called and we had some connections there, and we were going to go in and pitch some ideas to producers who were on the lot. And we drive up, and here's the studio guard who we've known, Scotty, who was this great guy who we've known for the year, and we're pals with him. And he's like, well, boys, there's no parking place for you. You have to go park on the street and walk. And we're like, but but you know us. And he's like, yeah, I know, but you still have to go park on the street. And they had painted over our parking space and put somebody else's name on it. So it was like,
wow, that is a tough lesson. That
fame is so ephemeral.
we think that only happens in movies and TV shows.
Oh, no.
That actually happened in real life.
Yeah, no, it was, and I mean, there's a ton of those kind of stories where, you're ticketed for the big time until you're not ticketed for the big time.
Yeah. Like, for example, one of the biggest comedians of all time, Dave Chappelle, the name of his production company is Pilot Boy Productions. And the photo of him for it is him in shackles. And you go, ha, that's funny. And then you go, no, that guy had over 20 pilots. He just went holding deal to holding deal.
Well, for a time, that's all we did. We went from option deal to option deal to option deal. And that's what was keeping us alive, was we weren't really selling anything because it never got made. But, it's like, here's $1,500, here's $1,000, here's $2,000. Here's a step deal. When you turn in the script, you get paid X amount of dollars. And if it goes to the next level, you get paid X amount of dollars. So, I mean, literally, there were times where we got to get another option. We got to get another option deal because I can't pay the mortgage if we don't get another option deal. And so we would literally, my partner and I, our writing partner, would sit down and we go, okay, go through the files, find anything that we think is relatively good that we can try and get somebody to give us some money so we can, make it to next month.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of rejection. The fact that you're still acting and you're still in the business is a testament towards your ability to just not take no for an answer.
I suppose, or stupidity, one of the two. But yeah, no, I mean, again, luckily if you take COVID out of the equation, the last 10 years have been very good to me, so I can't really complain. It's a roller coaster ride, but you do one national commercial and suddenly you're in pretty decent financial shape for the next 3 or 4 months. So
that's another thing. IMDb does not list commercials for the
most part. Well, IMDb, I remember, and I think it was 1989 or something like that. I was at some workshop and they said there's this new thing coming called IMDb, and everybody was like, well, what is that? There's the players directory. Why do we need IMDb? We have this big phone book that has everybody listed in. And so when IMDb took off, my agent said, well, you got to go on IMDb because you have like over 100 credits. You got to tell them to put your credits up there. And so and there's nobody to talk to. You have to do it all via the computer, and they make it as difficult as they possibly can for you to get stuff on. And I kept getting these emails back. Okay, do you have an air date for the episodes of General Hospital that you did in 1986? Like, who has an air date of episodes of a soap opera from 30 years ago, 40 years ago? Do you know what the title was of the soap opera episode that you did in February of 1988? No. And now I save all the call sheets. I save every script. I list who was the director, because I never did any of that stuff. And also, nothing was digitized. Right. I did all these TV shows in the 80s that got canceled after 4 episodes that I don't know where they went to, but they just disappeared. They're not anywhere. And, producers didn't know about any of that kind of stuff, and they didn't know they could make money, 30 years after the fact. I still get residuals from The Incredible Hulk and The Fall Guy because they're rerunning somewhere. I don't know where they're rerunning. Me TV is the greatest invention of all time. It's like, for actors like me, it's like I get a residual check for $450, and it's like the Fall Guy was on somewhere in the country, or Beauty and the Beast was on somewhere in the country, and it's like, okay, I get some free money.
So with all those holding deals and all the writing projects and the drafts, where was your meeting with David Lee Roth in the midst of that? Because the movie Crazy from the Heat was slated for 1985, 1986.
Yeah, I was going to say, I thought it was the mid 80s.
Mhm.
The thing that sticks out in my head is I'm generally pretty healthy, but I had a cold. I almost didn't go to the meeting because I had a cold. But I thought, I'm almost over the cold and I'm probably not contagious or anything, so it'll be okay. But my voice was kind of scratchy as a result of the cold. So I go in and meet with him and I'm kind of, and I say, I apologize, my voice is kind of scratchy because I got a cold. And he starts talking to me and his voice is really scratchy. And I say, do you have a cold also? And he goes, no, it's a lifetime of rock and roll. And it was basically from being, the front man for Van Halen for all those years. He had, I think, probably burned some of his vocal cords. But yeah, he was very funny. And I remember I thought his videos that he was Diamond Dave, I think were the videos, were very clever and very funny. And he was kind of poking fun at himself,
Yeah.
the rock star image. He was kind of making fun of himself. And I remember we talked about that so many actors are unwilling to poke fun at themselves and take themselves so seriously that they're serious artists. And he said, well, rock stars are even worse than that. And so, we had a nice conversation. I obviously didn't do the movie, and I never really gave it much thought. My approach is, you take it very seriously when you walk in the door, you do your best, and then as soon as you walk out of the door, it's like, okay, whatever. It goes away because I don't have any control over it. So I never, until you mentioned it, I had actually totally forgotten all about that meeting.
Was this a case where the studio or your agent put you up for it?
Yeah. I had a manager. I had a very good manager at the time, and she and I had talked about David Lee Roth, and I thought it was funny. And even though I wasn't born in LA, I grew up kind of my teen years in LA, and so I was a huge rock and roll fan. So I saw just about everybody who was anybody because there were so many great clubs in LA.
Mm-hmm.
Zari's, the Whiskey, the Roxy, all those places. A lot of bands played in those before they got to be stadium era bands. Yeah. And I never saw Van Halen, but I knew of Van Halen because I lived in Sherman Oaks and they lived in Pasadena, so it wasn't very far away. So everybody kind of knew about Van Halen. They were this kind of really hip, kind of semi-local band that everybody thought was going to get really hot. And so I had talked to my manager about Van Halen because I remember saying to them, I'm surprised nobody's made a movie about the band, because between the interrelations between David Lee Roth and Eddie Van Halen, and the fact that they had this kind of meteoric rise from being club guys to being superstars, that, and kind of the timely end of Eddie Van Halen, I was really surprised that nobody made a movie of them. And that was the conversation. And then she said, well, he's doing a movie, you want to go in for it? And I said, yeah, sure. So again, I don't know how far I got in the process, because I went and had a nice meeting with them, and then again I promptly forgot about the project.
Eventually, they finished a script with Jerry Perzigian. I think.
Oh yeah,
his name right.
Yeah,
and you can buy the script in a script store in LA or an online thing. And supposedly they costumed the movie, and it was far along, but CBS Pictures just ceased to be. They didn't make the movie, and he got a settlement out of it for suing. I think he got $3 or $4 million for not making a movie.
Oh, that's not bad. Yeah.
Do you remember, though, if there was a treatment or any kind of notes you were given, or was it just, hey, do you want to meet Dave for lunch?
Yeah, no, it was basically, I don't know if they had a script. If they did, I never got a chance to read it. It was basically, I think there was like a 1-page kind of description of what they wanted to try and do and who they were looking for. And I have played a lot of, when I was younger, I played a lot of sleazy bad guys, and I also played a lot of sleazy lawyers. And I think they were considering me to play a sleazy lawyer. That was, I think. Got
it. And as you alluded to earlier, I reached out because I saw your name on a Joe Piscopo special, and the one before that had an overt David Lee Roth parody that he did of the song Yankee Rose, where it's Joe in a wig and doing a lot of the Roth stage moves. But I remember seeing a photo or two of Joe Piscopo and David Lee Roth in the mid 80s, maybe at the Comedy Store or something like that. Any idea, were they in the same circles? Because they were superstars at the same time.
That seems unlikely. That seems, I don't know David Lee Roth at all, but I mean, knowing Piscopo pretty well, I doubt it. The only thing, Joe was doing all these characters, and he did a lot of research, you know, that, so he did like an impersonation. It wasn't like a parody. He actually did a pretty spot on impersonation of the person. His Frank Sinatra was pretty remarkable. Yeah. And that might have been what he might have been hanging out with David Lee Roth to try and get his mannerisms down, or he might have gone to some shows or whatever, or maybe David Lee Roth thought it was funny that somebody was doing an impersonation of him. I don't know. You know, Joe's kind of a New Jersey guy, so I don't see him hanging out with David Lee Roth, but you never know.
You never know. And speaking of Joe's talent, I think he was ahead of his time in terms of being a comedian that could also sing, dance, play instruments. Do you view it that way as well, your time working with Joe?
Well, the problem that Joe had was nobody could figure out what to do with him. Because he wasn't really a typical comedian. He didn't stand up and tell jokes. He was kind of a lounge performer. He did impressions. He sang. He put on costumes and did like full on, you know, impersonations of various people. He had these bizarre characters like Rappin' Fats and all these other characters that he made up.
Yes.
So the problem was, it wasn't like he was Jerry Seinfeld who could tell jokes the whole time, or Ray Romano, where you kind of based a show based on his life. So the pilot that we ended up working on with him, he played Joe Piscopo. He played Joe Piscopo, and part of the show was his act, and then part of the show was he was home. And you know, we wrote numerous drafts, and he contributed to it, and other writers contributed to it, and we never really got it to the point where it really kind of jumped off the page. It was good, and it probably would have worked, and the networks liked it enough to give it a green light initially. But that was the problem, was Joe wasn't like a really well-trained actor who could stretch and play something really, really out of his wheelhouse. But it was hard to find a way to use his talents for doing his kind of stage show. Mm-hmm. So that was the problem. And I think, you know, we got to know his agent fairly well, and you know, it was like, oh, he was Joe Piscopo. You bought Joe Piscopo, that kind of big lug who showed up, and he did his characters, and he was good at it. Mm-hmm. But it was like, okay, now what? Now what do we do?
That show, sorry to cut you off, it sounds like what you were developing was Gary Shandling's show before Larry Sanders.
Yeah, or it was, you know, going way back, it was Jack Benny or George Burns, where they basically weren't really actors, they played themselves. And then what we suggested was kind of using Gary Shandling or Jack Benny as a model. We said, you know, what you do is you just pack the show full of really funny character actors, and you know, Gilbert Godfrey was going to play Joe's agent, and all these other guys were going to be with a stunt coordinator for the show. Within the show was another stand-up comedian who was really funny. And we thought, you know, that's what'll make the show sell, is it's like Seinfeld. There's all these kind of characters that'll be breakout people because they'll be funny. Mm-hmm. Along with Joe, and they'll give him somebody to play off. So that was our plan, was to have it be a show within a show, and then we had all these really funny, I mean, one of the real beauties of the show was when we had auditions, all these comedians would come in and they would do their routines for us in an office, you know, 15 by 15. We'd sit in, here'd be all these top name, you know, Gilbert Godfrey. You know, we laughed so hard. You know, Gilbert is is a particular taste, and you have to, love or hate
I have
Gilbert.
that taste. Yes.
Yeah, I think he's hysterically funny, and he's also just one of the sweetest guys.
Yeah,
And,
the out of character Gilbert Gottfried is a very timid, shy, soft-spoken human being.
Yeah, very nice family man, and you would never guess that from his act, which is almost kind of, again, performance art.
Yes.
But we both my writing partner Gary and I just absolutely loved him. He was funny, and he was going to play Joe's agent, and for those of you who may not know Gilbert, Joe, hey, it's Gilbert. How are you? Loud, over the top, obnoxious, but incredibly funny.
Yeah, well, hey, I'm making you talk about Piscopo and Gottfried and Roth. Let's wrap up by asking, what are you working on at the moment in the near future that you're allowed to say that Deadline.com embargoes are not going to bar you from? Because you were on a great episode of Barry, which I believe they announced today is coming back from a third season.
Good. Maybe I'll be back on it, hopefully. I have a novel that I wrote that's on Amazon, which is called The Right Stiff, which is a comedic noir mystery. I just finished the second installment in the series. It's the Charlie McGinley Mysteries. There'll be 4 of them, hopefully by the end of the year. I'm going to Louisiana in about 2 weeks to work on a feature film, which I can't talk about too much more other than to say it's kind of a sophisticated horror film, and so that's kind of cool. That'll be nice to start the year with a job in Louisiana. I have a Domino's commercial that has been playing all the way through COVID, and hopefully will continue to play all the way through 2022. I have 3 screenplays that are my agent has got people reading. I just finished writing a TV pilot. Other than that, I'm not doing anything.
That's really impressive to see that you still have that drive all these years later. There's so many people that you would meet that would be on one thing and use that credit, that one anecdote, the rest of their lives. They sit at the bar and they go, I was on TV once.
No, I have a lot of friends who are in that position, and which is why I hate to say this, but I don't hang out with actors very much because they have a tendency to not live in the present. And it's like, if you're so miserable about things that didn't work out, you should probably retire. Unless I literally, probably about a month ago, I did a thesis film at USC. I haven't done a student film in 20 years. And I literally, because of COVID, I hadn't been doing anything. And my manager said, there's this thesis film. They called, and apparently they know who you are. Do you want to do it? And it was just so charming and lovely and wonderful to hang around with young people who are excited to be in show business, to be creating projects and art. And I was having a good time, and it was fun showing up. And I think that's the secret. If it's still fun showing up, then you should continue to do it. When it stops being fun showing up, then that's the time to go, I had a nice run, but it's time to find something else.
And the last thing I ask you before I let you go, does any footage exist of the characters that you talked about before, Junior and Salvatore?
Yeah, actually, it's so funny. We in 2020, Gary Stein, I'll give him a plug. Gary Stein, my former writing partner, called me and said, what do you think about doing something with Salon Jr.? And I was like what? And he said, anyway, we did a YouTube series. We did 8 episodes. It's called The Amazing Return of Salon Jr., and it's on YouTube. It was just a complete kick in the pants to do it. We created this whole ruse that Salon Jr. had been big stars and then got kicked off the network, and now they were coming back because they couldn't stay away from show business, although they'd been gone for 30 years and nobody had missed them. So yeah, if people want to, they can go and watch The Amazing Return of Salon Jr. We also had, which we used in the YouTube series, we had footage from one of the pilots that we shot that we were able to get permission to use. And we also had some footage from something we did 20 years ago that Gary and I did for fun with a DP who's a friend of ours. And we both have dark hair and he's got a mullet, and we used that and that was probably the most fun. We had all these publicity stills from 1986, which are ridiculous. And it was fun just to pull it all out. It didn't really do a whole lot for our careers, but it was a lot of fun to do it.
I'm looking forward to digging into that as soon as we hang up. If that is my sole discovery of today, then it was still a good day. So Sam,
okay, there you go.
Thank you for your time. Looking forward to whatever is next. And really, I appreciate you documenting great parts of history that with me that IMDb has not.
Okay, thank you very much.